Hi, my name is Corinne Moore, and today I will be interviewing my grandmother.
Barbara Holland.
And how old are you?
84.
And what kind of town did you grow up in? Was it big, small, conservative, liberal?
It was very small. Everybody knew everybody in school, the parents, sisters, brothers. A very small community.
So my grandmother and I have about a 65 plus year age gap. Even though much has changed for women in society, we are still fighting the same battles. What were the obvious motivation behind women's suffrage? How did they relate to you? And what else was covered in the suffrage movement?
Well, we got the right to vote. The women moving up in the workforce. They didn't always have to be a man to be the leader. And they got just more voice.
As Carly Woods states in her writing titled Debating Women, Gender Education, and Spaces for Argument, the Oberlin Collegiate Institute in Oberlin, Ohio, was coeducational upon its founding in 1833. By 1870, 29% of the nation's colleges were open to both men and women. That number rose to 69% in 1930. Was there a push at all for you to further your education past high school, even with colleges admitting females?
No high school was as high as any of us kids. When I come from a large family, and financially they were not able to, and it just wasn't the norm then.
During my teen years, we had a woman run for president. Do you think that during your teen years that would have passed at all?
Never. I don't believe a woman would stand any kind of chance of winning anything, mayor or anything at that time.
What impact did you see occur from the women's suffrage movement? Do you think it was ahead or behind its time, and did you see it coming at all?
Honestly, I wasn't politically minded. I didn't follow politics, but women were more outspoken, and they felt like they had a role in society besides just being a stay-at-home mom. I believe it was behind its time, did not see it coming.
The article, The Road to Gender Equality, Persisting Obstacles for American Women in the Workforce, written by Lucinda Palmer, states that during the years 1939 to 1945, Rosie the Riveter becomes an iconic feminist as many women worked in the military and business industries during World War II. Did you see her plastered anywhere? What impact did seeing her have on you?
I've seen her everywhere. Yeah, I believe everybody saw her. And my family was raised really to, the man was the head of the house. My dad was the head of our house. And you listened to men, you didn't listen to the women.
Are there any specific moments you can recall from the TV, radio, or newspaper covering this topic? What was the talk of the town? Were there big historical moments that you can recall?
Well, one thing, men and women couldn't sit in church together. The men sit up front, the women behind. They were always behind. And not only in America, I've seen that from other places as well. And men were always up front. Men were always the newscasters. I never remember a woman being a newscaster. They were always in the higher position, the higher pay. Women covered the lifestyles. And then women also covered the bigger stories later on.
So in today's time period, there's a lot more sports broadcasters that are females, especially in the NBA. Doris Burke is a well-known female sports broadcaster. Do you think that during your time, if women covered or narrated sports, it would have raked in the same amount of viewers and listeners as a male covering it?
Well, men do like sports, but women would be a no-no at that time. But honestly, I don't know for sure, but I got a feeling there would be a gap in the people listening to women.
If this movement occurred later in today's time period, what new things do you think would be incorporated into it?
The pay gap, the women fighting to make as much as the men and doing the very same job, but a lot less money.
So, a lot of things are more publicized on the internet now. Do you think that gives my generation more of an upper hand when it comes to fighting for social justice issues?
Yes, it's more covered on social media versus protest.
The way that you dressed when you were younger compared to how I dress now on a daily basis, do you think the way that I dressed would have been all right walking down the street in your town?
No, no, I do not. The dress code, ladies, most of the time wore dresses in my time. It was rare that you would see them in jeans or shorts unless they were, somewhere other than.
Unless they were like doing PE.
It never did you see a woman. There was usually a skirt. When I was in high school, they usually wore Oxfords with socks. Today, that's a no-no, I guess. And no, it was a completely different world then as it is now.
Did community members receive support for fighting? What backlash did they receive? Did any men join in on this fight in your hometown?
Okay, I come from a really small town where everybody knew everybody. I knew everybody in my class, like 23 in my class, and I knew all their parents, brothers, sisters, yes. So really, women did not speak up. It was left for the men, and it was just a hush-hush deal.
Was your job or jobs a result of women's suffrage, or was it available for women beforehand?
I believe it was available to some extent, but I was able to move up in my job.
The article, The Road to Gender Equality, Persisting Obstacles for American Women in the Workforce, written by Lucinda Palmer, states also that not enough states ratified the Equal Rights Act, although it was passed in Congress, making it unable to become a law. Florida and Georgia, which you have both lived in, still to this day in 2020 have not ratified this act. How do you feel in comparison to other states and living outside of the U.S. and Panama that these states are different? What changes did you see in women's living?
I was in the Panama, the Canal Zone, and the boys and girls there, I don't believe they got to go to school an awful long time because it was, they had to help support their families. Boys had to do a lot of work for really pennies a day. And so,
So based on how women are able to carry themselves now versus how they carry themselves then, do you still think women are fighting some of the same battles and working towards being seen equal as men at all?
yes, but I honestly think that the man should be head. Not just because I was raised like that, because the Bible says so. The man should be head of the house. And I know our women have to take over a lot of times, but for the most part, I just believe, and it may be my age, but I still believe that men should be in charge.
Do you think that if you grew up during my time period that you would still have the same belief?
Probably not, but I see a lot of disrespect in the younger people versus when we grew up. And I know there was good and bad in every generation, but I am so thankful that I'm as old as I am, because it just don't seem as happy. And like I said, it may be my age, some of it, but it just seems like there's more trouble than when the war was going on, you know?
Is there anything you see that has completely changed entirely from my generation to your generation in terms of women's rights?
Oh, the women are so much more liberal now, and they can go anywhere they want to, do what they want to, and back then you didn't.
What are some positive and negative effects that you've seen regarding my generation versus your generation after the women's suffrage movement?
Okay. Women seem to have more self-esteem today than what we had in my generation. And the negativeness is that children are left alone too much, a lot more today than when I was growing up. Both due to both parents either working or divorced. There seems to be no discipline in families today. And I believe that's it.
From my analysis, I have learned that women are still not seen as equals to men, even with how much we have progressed, which is a lot. It is very unfortunate to see that even with these huge steps we've taken, we are not close to being equal counterparts in everyday life. There is still so much change to be made, even with something as small as women being treated not as less than. Even though much has changed for women in society, we are still fighting the same battles.